Searching for the perfect minimalist 2-lens combo set for my new Leica M11, I'm starting out with the 35mm Summicron f2 and the 75mm Summicron f2. My first step was to choose the 35mm as my basic go-to focal length, and then adding on from there. I could have started with a 28mm and then added a 50mm as a combo, but I preferred the 35 over the 28 for many reasons, and I already have a good quality 28mm on my Q2. The 28mm focal length brings more into the frame, but I don't always like the barrel distortion that comes with it. It looks artificial to me and not something I would see in real life. The 35mm still fits enough into the picture for group shots or a scenic view, and it has a flatter view that's closer to what I see in real life. It doesn't have as much distortion as a 28mm, although it still has some, especially when doing portraits close up. So for a longer reach and upper body or headshot portraits, I paired the 35mm with a 75mm, and I also found that it works well for close-up of plants or flowers. Even stopping down to 2.8 or 3.4, the 75mm still gives a good background separation, and the subject stands out with a 3D effect. And the 75 keeps you from needing to move in close. I had to stand very far off to keep from scaring off this deer, and I cropped it in slightly, but the 35mm would not have worked as well for this shot. And with the 35mm, standing far off with this gives you a very large field of view and can help put things in context. And standing in closer with the 35mm, it gives you a combination of detail on the subject while getting some background view also. So with this park bench, I get a detailed view of that, but it gives some context of the scenery around the lake. And with this tennis court, the leading lines lead you to focus on the fence, but you can also see the tennis court and the nature on the left. So far I've skipped over the 50mm focal length since it may be a little too similar to the 35, and I could crop down the 35 if needed to get that 50mm look. So this 2-lens combo is still a compact system with one lens on the body, and the other lens can be carried in a coat or a camera bag. This whole system easily fits into a small camera bag. This one is the Q2 bag from Oberwerth. I don't need to carry that many extras since a fully charged battery lasts me all day, and a 128 megabyte SD card has plenty of room. But I can carry a power bank, and I can charge the M11 with a USB port if needed during a break. The build quality on both of these lenses is excellent, as expected from a Leica and the price that it commands. They both have a similar feel, very dense, all metal and glass construction. One has a screw-on metal hood, and the other has a retractable hood. The 35mm has a focus tab, which is nice for zone focusing. The 75mm focus ring has no tab, but I won't be really using the 75 for zone focusing. Both of the aperture rings have a similar feel. They feel fairly loose, and sometimes it's easy to accidentally move it 1 or 2 stops, so I would prefer if the aperture ring was tighter. I know you can send it in for service to tighten down the aperture ring, but that's just an extra hassle. So a 35 and 75 lens kit has a pretty versatile range. The 35 is wide enough for me, and it can crop down to 50 if needed, and the 75 is perfect for portraits, and I can crop it down to 90 for a longer reach. I'm predicting that I'll be using the 35mm much more often than the 75, but I'll see just how much use I get from the 75. So far I'm finding the 35mm more forgiving and quicker to focus. The 75 is more difficult to nail focus exactly because of the shallower depth of field. So I need to slow down more with the 75, and there's a higher proportion of discarded shots because of the focus. I know I could have kept my TT Artisans 35 f1.4, or I could have gotten a similar or better quality lens from Voigtlander and at a much cheaper price. But since I already have the M11, I'm deciding to go all in with Leica lenses. I think it makes sense to use the lenses that the camera was designed for. The camera and lens work together to produce a signature Leica look. And I can either keep the shots close to out of camera, but there's also a lot you can do with Lightroom, so I could go deeper into editing if I wanted to. Most of these shots I'm showing now have a medium amount of editing, but another option is to explore vintage Leica lenses to get more character out of the image. I went with the Summicron versions instead of the more expensive Summilux versions. I could have went with the higher end Leica 35, such as the 1.4 FLE, or I could have went with the Apo Summicron 35mm, but the prices go up exponentially on these with very small incremental benefits, so I think the regular Summicron is good enough for me. I'm still wondering if I'm missing out not having a 50mm lens. Another option would have been to have a 35 and 50 as a two lens kit, or even going with a single 50mm lens for a one lens, one body camera kit. Or another option would be to add a 50mm for a three lens kit with a 35, 50, and 75. Just like having a two watch collection, being satisfied with a two lens kit is something I'm shooting for. It may never come, but it's fun to try. Let me know in the comments what your favorite focal length combination is, and thanks for watching.